Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Tuesday. I guess it's afternoon, but I'm on the West Coast with my guys today. Joining me from up the coast in Oakland is Marc J. Spears from Andscape. Hello, Marc.
Still drinking coffee, and I just had some orange juice, so it's early for us.
And in LA, although not with me, across town is Youngmisuk. What's up, Om?
What up, Wendy? Welcome to LA, although it's a little chilly by LA standards.
It's true, but at least it rained. I think it's always, I know people here don't like it, but it's great. It's always good when it gets rain in LA. LA always needs rain.
California, period.
Right. I like it when I fly in and the LA River's got water in it.
Yes.
Instead of just concrete.
It's not normal.
You were at the Clipper game last night. I'm going to Lakers Celtics tonight, and then a bunch of games in LA this week. Tomorrow, Celtics Wolves, Clippers Wolves. Things are going great for the Wolves right now. Thursday, Suns Clippers, and Friday, Nuggets Lakers. So full week at crypto.com. Going to be hanging out here in LA. Last night, Clippers with obviously their biggest win of the season. They whomped the Celtics by 20. First time all season, the Celtics didn't cross over 100 points. It was 93 points for them. I'm not going to focus on the Celtics. I'm not super worried about them. It's, to me, the game was more about the Clippers. Also, the Celtics play tonight. And if I say something about them, they could totally go the opposite direction, which happens a lot on this pod anyway. But to me, huge moment for Kawhi Leonard. He goes 10 of 12 in that game. Signature performance, far and away the best he's looked this year. What was your takeaway from, I know it's December, but an important win for the Clippers?
They needed this win. I mean, they've been very up and down, very inconsistent, a team that just doesn't look like it has any rhythm or continuity. There are times in quarters where they look explosive with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard back, and then they completely fall apart and are out executed down the stretch by the Orlando Magic, which happened last Tuesday, where Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are still on a minutes restriction. Norm Powell's out. Luke Kennard's in and out of the lineup. John Wall's on a minutes restriction, doesn't play in back-to-backs like Kawhi Leonard. It's been a frustrating start for Ty Lue, who's had to try to figure out all these rotations and all these things while the medical team is basically telling him, you can't play this guy anymore. You got to take him out, things like that. So Paul George is finally out of a minutes restriction. He no longer has one. Kawhi Leonard now is building up to about 30 minutes. Maybe that minutes restriction is going to be increased even more. And so this is about now, I think, 4 of the last 5 that they've had Kawhi and PG together. Kawhi and PG have played a total, I believe, of 8 games this season, Brian, together on the floor. And I believe they are 6-2 with them together. And this was the best Kawhi has looked since tearing his ACL on June 14th, 2021. He did not look like he was just kind of feeling his way through the game. He did not look like he was just going to be playmaker. Although I will say this, even though he hasn't gotten back to his old form, there are several teams that still pay attention to him defensively like he is the old Kawhi Leonard, sending double teams at him. And so oftentimes he's just kind of reduced to being a playmaker, but not last night. 10 for 12. He didn't look flat on his shot, which he's looked up until this point last night. Like, that like soft arc he has with the nice bounce that he always gets at the rim on 3-point shots. He didn't really have that until last night. And so there was one 30-second stretch, Brian, where it looked like old Kawhi. He pulls up and hits a 3, comes back down on defense, grabs a rebound one-handed in traffic with his big mitt, and then basically comes back down the floor and sinks like a little mini running hook shot. And at that point, Clippers end up going up by 16, and Celtics never recovered.
It's interesting. It's like you almost forget how good he is, right? That's the first time this season he scored over 16 points.
Yes. Yeah.
And we really haven't seen Kawhi, right, since he left Toronto in terms of an elite fashion. And so it's just with the Clippers, man, it's been hard for me to.
Well, he was elite. He was elite in the playoffs in 2021 before he got hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's because of that injury. It's like it's been hard for me to have faith in him. Like so many people so many of our brethren have picked the Clippers to win, right, or to make it to the finals, and it's just so much on them. And then you see a game last night, like on Monday night, and you're like, wow, okay, this is why. But it's still hard for me to have faith in it. Like, is this temporary? Is this going to be long? It's like you just don't know what to expect from them.
And this is very predictable, Spearsy, because like they get up for teams like the Celtics, man. And you knew it, like the arena was filled. There were a lot of Celtic fans in the house, as there always are. They get up for teams like this. It's the Orlandos on a Tuesday night. Yeah. It's the 1:00 Saturday game, against some team that they don't find sexy. And then they end up kind of just going through the motions.
Brian, I don't, the Western Conference, like, I can't recall it being this wide open, man. Like, we could probably rattle off like 5 teams that could represent the league in the finals right now.
And that's good for the Clippers because it means that they haven't lost any ground. Not that I think that they're even really worried about where they're at in the standings, but like ramping Kawhi up and then dealing with whatever injury setback that he had when he just missed a month. He just missed games. They never really said why. Yeah. There's no real penalty for that. They have a big homestand this week. They have a great week and they'll be like in 4th place. I don't want to assume anything with them, and they do have a back-to-back. So they have a home back-to-back. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but I
do think there was a feeling in the organization when Kawhi and PG were out. Paul was out 7 straight games. Kawhi was out 6 games in the latest like setback. That they were like, we're kind of starting to let games slip away here. We need these guys back on the floor. Like, they practiced on a Friday, and everybody, including Ty Lue, thought they were going to play on a Saturday. It was a 1:00 game against Sacramento. This was about 2 Saturdays ago, and then all of a sudden, the medical team held those 2 out of that game, even though they got through the Friday practice okay. And I remember there was like a sense of frustration in the organization. Like, when are we going to start getting guys healthy again? Because we are just letting games slip away. And they got rocked that Saturday by Sacramento at home.
Yeah, and they're in 7th place. And like I said, they're 2 games in the loss column from 3rd. Well, I think it's 3 games from 3rd.
How many games are they out of 1st?
3.5 as of right now. Yeah. So, and look, ultimately, when you have Kawhi, their number one priority is to have Kawhi healthy in the postseason. And so it's hard to swallow. Like you mentioned that game against Sacramento. Like, it's hard for Ty Lue to swallow that, I'm sure. But when you have Kawhi, you have to play the long game. You're really not left with any choice. The thing about it is, Alma, is that this team is built to be really, really deep. But we've seen, because so often Paul and Kawhi have been out, that it's hard for that depth to be able to really show up. They really need one or the other to be their go-to scoring option down the stretch. And the thing is, you're talking about Kawhi's getting lift on his shot. I mean, that was kind of the one thing that I was watching, the last couple of games before he goes 10-12 against the Celtics. I think he was like 7 of 28 or something like that, 6 of 28. And the thing about Kawhi that's so impossible to stop is when he gets to his spot in the mid-range and he puts that shot up with his arms so far out straight, you can't really defend it. And it's killer. It was, in the 2019 playoffs, particularly the finals, like when he would get to his spot, there was nothing you could do. And I remember covering that finals and watching Kawhi go through his pregame shooting routines. And he would wear out 2 or 3 coaches with it. And he would shoot those mid-range shots, and he would shoot. I'm not kidding you. He would shoot 90% on those 15 to 18 foot mid-range shots. Now, granted, it was in practice, but it was with a coach on him.
Right.
He was not standing there getting fed shots. He was going up against a guy who was challenging the shot.
Yeah.
And and so that's the bread and butter of his game. I realize that defensively he's important, but for him to do what he needs to do as an offensive leader, he's got to have that. And so seeing him shoot at a high percentage again, now it's just one game, we'll see. I don't know if he'll play against the Wolves or Suns, whichever they'll pick.
Yeah.
The Suns are pretty banged up right now without Booker. I don't know if Booker will be back by Thursday. But he's got to string some games together. You had an interesting story, that came out a couple of days ago. John Wall finally made his return to Washington. It had been years since he'd played there because of the injuries and COVID scheduling and all that stuff.
Well, he did play there during COVID in 2021, but there were no fans.
Fans, right.
Yeah, with Houston. Right. And I think this was his first time that he got to be in front of fans, where fans got to thank him. He got to thank fans. He got to bring people to the game. He even told me, he was like, I got housekeepers coming, interior designers that kind of just helped me grow up, go from a 19-year-old with no tattoos, no beard, nothing, into becoming this adult. And I think for him, he was also saying, I didn't get to, his mom had passed away a year before he played in DC again, but he was hoping to see his seats where his mom would sit on the front row across the court from where the Wizards were. But in COVID, they didn't even have the front row set up. Wow. And so he was like, I was hoping to put flowers on the seat or something like that. And so he said, when the schedule came out, and when he was finally signed with the Clippers, and he was like, okay, December 10th Wizards, and he went to go buy those seats he used to have, they were gone. So he said he still couldn't do that where he could put flowers down, but he said the entire game he would just catch himself looking at those seats. Wow. But it was great to watch because the fans finally got to say goodbye to him and thank him. They had a video tribute the first time for him and nobody really saw it. And so this time they had a video tribute and they saw it. And then at one point, John got carried away. He had a good stretch. It was a rocky opening for him because he was probably too emotional. And then in the second quarter, he scores 3 baskets in a row or something like that. He looks at the crowd, pounds his chest and says, "This is my city." I think he admitted to the LA Times later that he actually forgot that he was wearing a Clippers jersey and he wasn't a Wizard anymore, but he got caught up in the moment. And the crowd cheered him like he was still a Wizard, which was pretty cool to see.
Yeah. He gets his jersey there retired, right?
He's got to. I mean, as I told him, he was like, in a city that loves professional football, but is really deeply a basketball city when they are going good. They just haven't had good teams, college basketball, pro basketball. He was their franchise quarterback. But more than that, I mean, this guy who did not grow up there, grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, is probably as charitable as a professional athlete as Washington, D.C. has probably ever had. He's just involved with kids there. He's involved with homeless people there. He's involved with single moms. I mean, he's just basically doing everything he can. And he's spent a lot of money in that city for charitable causes.
I spent quite a bit of time around the Beal Wall Wizards. They were pretty significant.
With all those Cavalier battles?
Yeah. They never really beat them, but and then early in LeBron's career, he had the Gilbert Arenas wars. The Wizards haven't really been successful. They've advanced in the playoffs a couple of times in the last 20 years, but playoffs in Washington, it's awesome to be there because it's cherry blossom time. The arena is in a cool district in the city, although it's changed over a lot. There's stuff there. When they first built it, it was legitimately in the heart of Chinatown. Now there's not much of Chinatown left. But, But I always loved going to playoff games there. It's the crowd is not like a top 5 crowd or anything like that. But
they're kind of like Atlanta's crowd, right? Where they
it's
cheer.
A good comparison.
They cheer for whoever comes in.
Exactly right.
A star comes in, they're rooting for the star.
Yeah.
When Kobe announced his retirement, I remember he announced it in December, give or take. And I think this first road game after the retirement was Philly, I think. And so, Philly was crazy for him. And then the Lakers played in Washington a couple nights later. And I remember I was at that game. And that was where I started to understand what the Kobe retirement tour is going to be like. Because, obviously Kobe is Kobe, but I didn't think that there would be the outpouring like in Washington. In fact, that night, I think the Lakers won, and I think John Wall's mother got into it with a fan defending John, if I'm not mistaken. I remember there being a little thing where she was, yelling at somebody who was wearing a Laker jersey. So
there is look, there are a lot of Laker fans everywhere, but there are a lot of Laker fans in DC. I mean, even when the Lakers just went there like a week ago, Anthony Davis had like 55. You could hear the fans in the building. It sounded like it was basically Staples Center, crypto, basically. I mean, there are just a ton of Laker fans that come out for the Lakers all the time.
So, the Wall-Beal relationship was always something that was very much under a microscope. There were times when they were awesome together. Listen, John Wall had a couple of absolutely incredible seasons playing alongside Brad Beal. He got the Supermax for a reason, because he was an elite lead guard at the time. And in that interview that you had with him about going back home, he had some interesting things to say about looking back on that home.
Yeah, I asked him if he had any regrets of his time there, and he said no. He said, but if I look back on things, he's like, because I asked him about their relationship, and everybody always points to that, there were two guys that wanted to be the man in the franchise, and it wasn't going to work. Two guys that needed the ball. And John said, look, he's my brother. We always had each other's back. We always competed against each other and pushed each other. He's like, yes, there are times when two guys who wanted to be the man didn't always see eye to eye and had some disagreements. He's like, but at the end of the day, we were brothers. And he said, if anything, perhaps I should have shared the ball more with him and gave him the ball to run more pick and rolls, to run the offense at an earlier time, because he was like, I saw how he expanded his game every year. And when John got hurt, Brad then became the 30-point scorer that we saw him for 2 straight seasons. And he said, you would see him running the pick and roll. You would see him be a playmaker. He goes, all those things, maybe if I gave him those responsibilities a little bit earlier sometimes, instead of me doing it all, maybe Brad would have been able to do that at a quicker pace, and maybe they would have been better. And he also said that when Brad was averaging those 30 points, he goes, I wish I was healthy enough to be his roll dog, like when he was my roll dog earlier. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, the thing about Wall that, we all know so well, the incredible misfortune that Klay Thompson had with back-to-back catastrophic injuries. The situation happened with Wall, I feel like people don't recognize how crazy that was. He had a heel problem, and he had surgery on it, and that was gonna he was going to knock him out for months. I don't remember if it was knocked him out the whole season. I remember he had
it was a whole season. He had surgery. He had on his left heel. I think it was because of a chronic Achilles injury he had. And then he had an infection. Well, I don't know if they found the infection in it until when he slipped at home a month later after having the season-ending surgery and ruptured his Achilles. So he had to have surgery for that. And then they found an infection from the previous heel surgery that he says almost led to his foot being amputated. And he said that he has bone spurs, like I think it was like in his foot and in his knee, that were so bad that like basically that's why he was out for basically as long as he was.
He has had so many injuries in his career. I know that at one point, because I did a story on him, he at one point had surgery on both knees on the same day. It was in the off season, and he's like, got to get both of these knees done. And he had both knees. Can you imagine recovering? By the way, he came back from that and had an all NBA season. But yeah, that's your point. Like, he had triple issues with his Achilles. He had a surgery basically to save himself from tearing his Achilles. And then he slipped at home a short time later and tore his Achilles. Now think about that. Think about that you're recovering from a surgery that you're doing to protect your Achilles, and then you tear your Achilles. And I don't know what happened on that slip and fall, but obviously devastating. And then, as you mentioned, the third part about that was an infection that came into that. So really had a bad run that, and I think because those injuries happened like after the initial surgery, it was like, oh, he's out, and he's just still out. And I don't think, obviously, if you were a Wizards fan, you remember, but I'm not so sure people realize what, and then also, he takes the year basically sitting. I don't think people equate what he actually went through. Spears, you have a story coming out on Wednesday about the Clippers as well, about Ty Lue and Steve Ballmer. I wondered if you could tell us about that.
Yeah, found out that Steve Ballmer, who's got like $80 billion. Spent time staying at a Best Western in Mexico, Missouri. It cost $79 a night on a heavy night.
Did he get free breakfast, Spearsy?
I'm sure he did.
I'm sure it was offered. Whether he ate it or not, I'm not sure. But Ty Lue and Mr. Ballmer, as Ty calls him, have grown really, really close. And in Ty's hometown of Mexico, Missouri, it's a small town of about 20,000 people. There's a lot of issues. There's poverty issues. There's lack of education. Kids aren't excited about going to school, going to college. And there's a big health issue because their hospital closed earlier this year. And for months you had to drive 45 minutes or more to get medical help. And now they've recently just had a little small healthcare place, but not a hospital.
Urgent care?
An urgent care, yes. And so Ty is trying to figure out what to do to help his hometown. And he is certainly the son of the place. He usually has a fireworks display every 4th of July. He's brought Kevin Garnett and Chauncey Billups out, and he's their favorite son. He has a street named after him, but he's always ultimately trying to help the place become a better place. He actually left Mexico, Missouri during his high school years to go move in with his uncle and kind of help settle his life. And he ended up playing in Windhorst's beloved University of Nebraska. And then so he, basically enlisted in Ballmer in trying to help his hometown. And they're still trying to figure out a way to make the place a better place. Maybe even finding a nonprofit that will be on the ground to start programs and do different health things and educational things and youth programs and whatnot. But it's an interesting story about how this coach and billionaire coach who's done a lot of things to help people, and billionaire owner and a coach are bonding together to try to help this small town in Missouri and build a stronger friendship along the way.
It makes a lot of sense what you're saying about his hometown, Spears, because Brian Shaw told me this great story when I wrote about Ty Lue a year ago. He said Ty came from so little that he used to notice when they were on the Lakers together, Ty would always bring a 6-pack of ice cold Hawaiian Punch cans with him onto every plane trip. And he was like, but he would always bring a straw and drink them out of a straw. And so one day, Brian took the straw away and Ty was like looking for a straw everywhere. He would never drink it out of the can. And Brian then realized when he was doing that, Ty was pissed off that he didn't have the straw. He said, where are my straws? And he said, I know why you drink out of a straw. It's because these cans of Hawaiian Punch are so cold, your teeth hurt when you're drinking. You got to drink out of a straw. And he's like, when is the last time you went to see a dentist? And Ty was like, I've never gone to one. And Brian's like, what are you talking about? Everybody goes to the dentist. And Ty was like, no, my mom, we couldn't afford to go to a dentist when I was younger. And so Brian was like, as players now, we can go. It's like, the team will cover it as part of our medical. And so he said, Brian kind of pushed him to go to the dentist for the first time as a Laker. And he was
one
like,
of the things the dentist said was stop drinking 6 cans of
Hawaiian Punch.
Yeah. And so he basically was like, because Ty Lue does not drink alcohol. So basically, I think he was basically saying this shows you his upbringing of where he came from, that it was just like little things like that. He didn't even he thought going to the dentist was something for only rich people could afford to do. You know what I mean? And then when you explain to me what's going on in Mexico, Missouri, that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm taking it he made several visits to the dentist after that initial one.
Yeah, I think he had a lot. He might have had some. He might have had a few cavities. Who knows?
His teeth are spectacular now. Yes. When I think of Ty being mad, I always think of, I can't remember who it was now. I don't have that kind of memory. I think he was still an assistant. Do you remember? I might have been Sam Cassell. I think it was Sam Cassell. Something happened on the court. I'm just laughing and thinking about it. Because Ty has that face when he's angry, where he scrunches up his forehead. I think it was Sam Cassell. And if it's not, I apologize. Something happened on the court that was like really interesting. And Cassell like grabbed Ty. Ty was like looking the other direction and he grabbed him. Ty was really angry. You could see him say, "Don't mess with my suit." He was so angry. Like, "Don't touch my suit." Oh my gosh. The thing about Ty is he's so like, I covered him when he was coach of the Cavs. He's so quiet and unassuming when you see him on the sidelines. He looks like he is the absolute epitome of the duck on the water. And when he's when he's speaking to the media on the record in front of the microphones, he's purposely droll, purposely vague, purposely not very expansive. But then when you peel the layer back, you understand how brilliant this guy is, and how much depth of understanding he has. He doesn't. You have no idea how remarkable Ty Lue is just by watching him in interviews and watching him on the sideline.
He's a great guy, man, and certainly paid his dues under Doc, and has about as great of a basketball IQ as a coach has in this league. I think people are starting to see that, learn that about him, like just some of the counter moves he makes, and that's the thing. Like we mentioned the Clippers earlier, if they're healthy with him coaching that team, hey man, there could be a parade on Chick Hearn Boulevard, right?
Well, you just look at the West, and all these teams have flaws. I mean, the Pelicans are young and they haven't proven it, and they're injury fragile. The Grizzlies are at times out of control, still haven't proven that they can keep themselves in control. By the way, they're on a hot streak right now, still without Des Bane. They're on a hot streak. Denver is, dangerous, but they have
missing something, aren't they?
Well, they don't always.
Porter Jr.'s been out.
No, I mean just something like. Almost think they need more of a veteran presence. I mean, I love Uncle Jeff, and all that, but there's just something about them that I just do you believe they can win a championship? I think they're talented.
You know what it is?
They're just,
it might be Spears.
Something.
I think it's the same thing the Clippers might be lacking. And it's like you want some like fiery leader to be on that team, right? Like the Clippers have a bunch of guys. They have a lot of veterans who are experienced, but they don't really have a guy who like is going to, I guess they had him Pat Bev years ago, but he really wasn't. Pat Bev does do a lot of shouting, but he's not like the leader, right? He wasn't good enough to be like, they need like a guy who's going to be like a leader when times are tough. To kind of say stuff to them, and
Kawhi does that with his play, but he
right. But like Ty Lue basically is their leader, and when you look at the Denver Nuggets, like Jokic is such a nice guy. He leads by example, but he's not going to be a vocal guy that much. Yeah. It's really kind of Michael Malone, right? Jamal Murray's not really a vocal guy. Porter Jr. certainly isn't. So like they kind of need. I think they're lacking that type of guy too.
Like
they don't defend.
Vet,
they don't. Yeah. They have an absolute killer offense, and they do not have a reliable defense. And I just don't think a team that's in the bottom 5 in defense. Yeah, it's what they are right now. I don't know where they'll be in the spring. I can't see them winning 3 playoff rounds. I mean, they can prove me wrong. I mean, one of the things coaches, I always default to defense whenever I talk about teams. And like more and more like coaches or agents or even players, like defenses doesn't matter as much in this league. And I'm like, I don't believe that. Like last year, guess who the top 2 defensive teams in the playoffs were? The Celtics and the Warriors. So, but you look at Phoenix, they're, riddled with injuries and they have depth issues. The Warriors, their second unit is a question and they've been terrible on the road. Portland, I don't know whether you believe in them, but I'm just talking about the teams around.
I mean, Minnesota
Minnesota is not in the conversation right now. I mean,
but they're like still like you got to respect them. Like they got some talent there, right? They're the box of chocolate team. I don't, you know what I mean? Like,
that's a problem if you're trying to win.
But
Yeah, well,
think the
like
thing,
once Cat gets back, it's like then here we go again. Can Gobert and Cat, learn to play together again.
But I'll say this about the Nuggets as a franchise, the team that I cut my teeth with in the beginning. I don't know that there's been a more successful franchise that's never made it to the NBA Finals. Like they go to the playoffs every year, and well, ever since Melo showed up, right? Let's give Melo his due. Like if you think about like the Dan Issel years and the English years, and then some of the things Mutombo did with them, and then since Melo arrived, and then Joker, like they're always good, but they just never can get over that hump, man.
Well,
2 Western
the question
Conference
is,
Finals appearances, over the last 20 years. Then if you go back to like Issel and Alex and Fat could never get over the Lakers, like they just never can get over the hump.
well, the question really is, and I think this is a question for Embiid too, is can Jokic and Embiid flat out win you a high stakes playoff series?
I like Embiid's chances of that better.
Well, we'll see.
He lives up to he can live up to the moment.
I gotta say though, Jokic was balling in that first round against Golden State, especially at the end. But that was without Porter Jr., without Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
But he gave the Warriors a handful at the end there, as much as he could. But yeah, I mean, you still wonder at the end of the games if you throw the ball into Jokic, is he going to be able to get you that basket? He can find someone.
Murray's proven that he could hit big shots
in the bubble. Yeah, for sure. And
he just hit a big one in Portland the other day.
Yeah.
But they're just like the defense and just that leader. Like I feel like they need to still like tweak that. I mean, obviously they got a star and some co-stars, but the rest of the roster needs to be tweaked a little bit.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the East right now. One of the hottest teams in the East are the New York Knicks.
Woo! Go New York, go New York, go!
The Knickerbockers.
Who have won 4 in a row.
You buying?
I'm buying that the Knicks are a 500 team. And my guess is they're going to be about a 500 team at the end. Yeah. And that may be good enough to back them into the back end of the playoffs. But I'm going to say that, a couple of weeks ago, they were really in a down spot. They kept losing at home, and they were getting kind of blown out at home. And I just couldn't believe they were so bad defensively. I can't even imagine Tibbs every night going back to his office, living with a team that was that bad defensively. I just never saw it. Yeah. And so they've done a couple of things, but Tibbs is he's taken some veterans and thrown them on the end of the bench. He's like, I'm not playing Derrick Rose anymore. I'm not playing Evan Fournier anymore. He's stopped playing Cam Reddish. Reddish had some moments early in the season where he looked like he might get some traction, but he's like, I'm only playing guys who can defend. And so he's playing Quentin Grimes more. He's playing Miles McBride more, which is, that's a guy that hardcore Knicks fans beg the, I kind of laughed at times when I would see the Knicks struggle, and I would see, Knicks fans why don't we play Deuce McBride more? I'm like, that's what you think is going to make a difference, Miles McBride. But, they were getting absolutely toasted from the 3-point line, just getting destroyed night after night. So he's put some more athletic guys on the wing, and it's made a huge difference. In the last 10 games, it was already getting better, but the last 10 games of the Knicks are the number 5 defensive team during this winning streak, which is 4 games, which I know is a small sample size, of course. They're the number 1 defensive team. They were so bad during that time. And when you watch them play, Mitchell Robinson, he's hard to deal with in the paint. Now he fouls a ton, and it's hard to keep him out there at times. But the Knicks are a team to me that they're just 500. They have 3 guys with $100 million contracts who are all, in my opinion, good, not great. RJ Barrett is, he's having a poor shooting season. He just recently climbed back over 40%. He's had a poor shooting career. He just hasn't shown he can shoot. But he's got a $100 million contract. He's good. Jalen Brunson is good. Obviously, a huge upgrade for them from where they've been. He averages 20 points a game. He's good. He's not great. There are times when he's great, but he's good. He's got a $100 million contract. And Julius Randle at times can be great. but is generally a good player. And he's been really good recently. They're good. They're not great. They're basically a team equipped to at some point have somebody say, I want to play in New York, and to acquire them. We thought that was going to be with Donovan Mitchell. It didn't work out. But I've seen some stuff recently about what they might do in the trade market. They seem to be a heavy trade market team. Number one, because they have like, I don't know what it is, like 11 tradable first round picks. So they have the currency, and they have a bunch of guys on their roster. You know, they have a deep team. I wouldn't say it's all quality depth, but they have pieces and parts that other people might. Yeah. And so I can just tell you, it's my understanding, because this has come up with Fournier, because he's on the bench right now, that, there's this belief out there that the Knicks are looking to get off of contracts, or looking to get off of Fournier. Because
how much is Fournier's deal again? Because I know it's huge.
It's not huge, but it's not good. Let me check and see what that is. But from what I understand, like, the Knicks are not interested in shedding salary going forward. They'll do business, but like, I think there's been a concept that they might like attach a pick to get off of Evan Fournier or something like that. And to my understanding, that's not true. I think there's definitely a, I think they would trade Evan Fournier. I mean, he's not playing for them right now. Of course they would trade him, but I don't think they feel any sort of desperation to clear cap space. I don't think they are looking. Fournier makes $18 million this year and $19 million next year.
That's not too bad.
I mean, it's not good for a guy who's not playing.
Yeah.
Who's having a miserable year shooting the ball. But I don't think they're desperate to clear cap space. I think they want to try to find a way to get into the back end of the playoff discussion. And, like right now they're in that. They're right now with this winning streak, they're inside the line within sixth place. I don't think they're going to stay there, but I do think 500 will get into the top 10. Now you can make an argument that this is not the year to be middling. This is the year to be bad at the end, but no,
they won't be bad enough.
Yeah. But you've known Julius Randle for a while, haven't you, Spears?
Yeah, and first, let's give Julius credit for kind of rebounding after last season. I know he was really frustrated, and I think a lot of it was an expectation of getting more help that didn't arrive. And so that, I think, kind of soured kind of how things were with the team last year, not feeling like
he got into it with the fans too. That's, it's never good when you are quarreling with your own fans, much less,
But he's had a monster December. He's averaging 27, 9, and 3. And I got to know him actually. Like I think we forget like some of the things that he's gone through. Like he broke his leg the first game of his career in LA and went to New Orleans, and he actually went and did an interview with him in New Orleans. Shout out to his agent Aaron Mintz, who hooked it up, and he's like, yeah, just tell Marc to come to the house. And this is like really rare for an NBA player to say that, right? And so I go to his house, and he had somebody there making tacos. I don't remember if it was a Tuesday or not, but they were making tacos. and we just sat and had a great conversation for like 2 hours, watched some basketball, met his famous son, right? And just like a really cool guy, man. I always respect the fact that he did that, that he thought it was important enough to, because there hadn't been a lot written about him at the time, to kind of, hey, let me bring you in to try to write this piece about me. And so he's certainly somebody that you like as a person. I've gotten to like as a person, and is very talented. And probably if the Knicks get an all-star, will represent him. But I just kind of wonder where he is in his career. Do the Knicks want to keep him? Does he want to stay there? Things are certainly getting a little better, and I think he deserves credit for being the main one that's kind of leading this current streak.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like when you watch them, they really, really, really rely a lot on Brunson to be their offensive creator at the end of games. And sometimes he does it. But it's hard as a guy of that size in the NBA to do it. You know, it's one of the things that the Cavs fans are seeing with Donovan Mitchell already. Donovan Mitchell has carried the Cavs to some wins with some great fourth quarters, but sometimes at the very end, it's hard to have a guy that size.
Yeah.
You know, it happened on Monday night in San Antonio. Like he wasn't able to get the ball up onto the rim because it's struggles. So like they do need Randall to be, and he's their leading scorer, you know, like he is getting it done. And he's shooting the ball much better. Maybe shouldn't be taking as many threes as he does, but you know, he has games where it works out, but
he was huge. There was a last month, a big road trip for them in the West Coast swing when they got they lost like 145-135 to OKC at home. And
the defense was embarrassing.
Things were not looking good for the Knicks. And you could see that if they had a disastrous West Coast trip, who knows what would have happened with the Knicks. And they win their first 2 games on that trip. They go and win in Utah, obviously not an easy place for any East Coast team to go in and win. And then they win by 3 at Denver in like a tight game. And Julius has like 34 and 11 in that game. Now they go on to lose like at the Warriors and at Phoenix, but those 2 big wins to start off that trip, I think really kind of got the good juju going back for them. You know what I mean? I think that was. But then
they went home and kicked some games at home, and
yes,
the natives are really restless on Tibbs. But you know, this is who I think they are. I think. Yeah. We'll see if they make a move, but I don't think that there's a trade for them at this moment that makes a huge amount of sense. We're like, oh, that's going to make a huge difference. We'll see. Maybe a star becomes available soon. But like, and I agree. I've been saying this, and everybody's been saying this for 5 years. Well, the Knicks will get a star, and they haven't yet. I agree.
Yeah.
You know what I'm interested in?
But interrupting you real quick. You know how I say not to interrupt you? No, I'm not going to say not to interrupt you. I'm going to say interrupt you.
Bontemps never cares. He interrupts. He doesn't care. Yeah. He goes blasts right over the top.
Would it be fair to say, and Lakers were walking into the conversation, that there's more pressure to wear that uniform in New York than there is any other uniform? And kudos to Melo and kudos to Amari for trying, right? But there's so many superstars who have had a chance to go there that have said no. They have said yes to the Lakers, but have said no. And obviously there's a Dolan aspect of it as well. But are they fearful of, because when you go to their games and when you watch their games on like the electricity, like players time and time again will say, man, the Garden, playing in the Garden, oh man, the Garden. But nobody wants to be there every day. They just want to make guest appearances in the Garden. And then I will say this too, and you could attest to this because you were in that market for a long time. The one thing that amazes me, and it's kind of like this with Clippers, Lakers, a little bit outside of their market, in the market, like they don't care about the Clippers at all in LA. The radio, TV, all they care about is Lakers. It's amazing to me that the Nets have Kyrie, Ben Simmons, and Kevin Durant. But in that area in New York, they care about the Knicks, man. Mm-hmm. Like the pressure on that franchise to like win and it's just, I don't think it's like any other in the league.
Well, there's 2 different types of pressure when it comes to Lakers, Knicks. Like with Lakers, the pressure is to live up to the glorious past where, you know, guys have had their championships, but at the same time, the Lakers have had so many championships that this fan base, yes, they are greedy. They want more and more, but they also have been, you know, their stomach was full not too long ago, right? The Knicks haven't had a championship since 1973. That was the year I was born.
They're not looking for, they want championships, but they'll take a playoff series.
Right. Yeah. And so you think about like, they have not had that consistency since the Pat Riley, Jeff Van Gundy Knicks, where they would get to the playoffs all the time. And I tell you what, till this day, of all the finals I've been to and everything, there is nothing like basketball in May and June in New York City. I mean, the weather is nice. People are going to the Garden. They're feeling good. Because, I mean, I was there when they went to the finals against the Spurs. And even though they got swept, it was still like, or I don't know if they think it was swept or they lost in 5. It was just amazing to feel basketball in the city in like summertime.
I mean, now you're going into my childhood, NBA on NBC on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But the thing is, the Garden, to be fair, the Garden is not what it used to be. The fans in the Garden now, I mean, you started to see it a little bit when they made their last playoff run, but it's like, it's not the same. Like the whole Upper Bowl now, man. It's like when you're walking around the concourse upstairs, it's like all tourists. It's like European stuff, and then downstairs it's all corporate. Where before, I mean, Garden fans, they were like New York fans. You know what I mean?
That's the NBA now at large, though, right?
Having said that, I'm very glad they did the renovation in the Garden. It's a lot better than it was. So, I mean, I respect what you're saying. I like the new Garden better than the old Garden. Sorry.
No. Yeah, new Garden. I'm just talking about the people that are actually in the building.
Yeah, I remember going to a Knicks game in like 2000, and during the whole Vinsanity thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think Patrick Ewing was making $15 million at the time or something like that, and he misses a free throw, and the fan goes, $15 million, $15 million. He makes the second free throw, worth every penny.
Yeah.
See, that's why I love New York crowds.
That is the thing. Like because I was there, I started my career as the backup Knicks writer behind Frank Isola in 1997. And so this is right before Patrick Ewing
took
a nasty
of
fall.
Media corps ever.
But you know what? I love
that span in New York.
Yeah. But Patrick fell, broke his wrist, was out for a little bit, a couple years later, and his career was never the same. But I loved Patrick Ewing. He was great. But he was never appreciated in that city. I mean, people will always bring up, the missed finger roll and, I'll see you Sunday. We're going to win Sunday, game 7, and he wouldn't be able to deliver. But when you look back on it now, it's like, you would gladly take that going to the playoffs every year and being in contention. Yes, he had the misfortune of having to run into Michael Jordan during that time. But it's like you would gladly go back and take that the Knicks were winning 50 games every year, making the playoffs, and they were always in contention.
Yeah. Spears, this is one thing I'm wondering about the Knicks. So, there's allegedly a tampering investigation ongoing with the Jalen Brunson signing. Mm-hmm. The NBA did one. The NBA did one
allegedly
with the Sixers with the PJ Tucker signing.
Yeah.
And they announced that penalty. They fined him 2 second-round picks. They said that they didn't tamper with James Harden, reducing his salary, but they did tamper with PJ Tucker. I don't want to go down this jag, and I also don't need a call from league office, but it's impossible. One is impossible without the other, because the only way they could have afforded PJ Tucker at that salary was if James Harden was taking a pay cut. But whatever, we'll move on from that.
Hey, shout out to Chris Herring, man. Read Blood in the Garden for the Knicks fans. Like the last beautiful time with the Knicks, right?
Our former colleague at ESPN, 538. Here's what I want. So anyway, they announced, I think it was in October. If it wasn't in October, it was early November that they announced what that penalty was for the Sixers. I mean, I think tampering is laughable anyway, but the NBA is like, has fined some teams the last couple of years. So they're trying to make some sort of fake enforcement.
Repeat that last.
There has never been any, I mean, it's not fake. I guess it's real. The teams that lost their picks, I guess they would say it's not fake.
So pile somewhere making these transactions.
So no penalty has been announced in the Knicks' alleged tampering of Jalen Brunson. And like, out of the things I'm worried about in the NBA, it's kind of low, but they got themselves in the corner here, because I know the Mavs were upset about it, but the Mavs, as has been discussed on here ad nauseum, botched handling Jalen Brunson and also undervalued him a year ago.
Yes. Who in particular? We don't have to mention names.
All right. How can you possibly accuse a father of tampering with the son? How are they going How are they going to do this?
That was a brilliant hire by the Knicks, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant hire.
I mean, isn't
sports all the time?
Isn't that like the college team that hires somebody's dad or somebody's coach to be the
right, but also
quota?
One of Jalen's agents is Leon Rose's son. So
brilliant.
I don't know, man. I don't want to say I got my popcorn out because I don't really care.
Don't hate the player, hate the game. Well,
the other thing is the Knicks have a 400 draft picks, so like if they lose a second round pick, it's not gonna really make a difference. I'm just interested to see how the NBA. And look, if and when they announce a penalty, let's say they say, "Oh, the Knicks spoke with him too early, and they will lose a 2023 second round pick." That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm sure it'll be a one-day story, but I'm interested for that day.
Weren't the Mavs up? The Mavs were also upset that like Jalen never gave them a chance. He didn't even talk to them. Like he never even came back to them. They set up a meeting and then like basically Jalen canceled the meeting.
So basically what happened was 2 years ago during the summer where it was all off, where like free agency was like in August, like all these deals were getting done like within like 70 seconds of the opening of free agency. Like there was all these deals, including sign and trade deals, which you don't do a sign and trade deal in 5 minutes. I can see how, you've signed Luka Doncic to the max contract in 50 seconds because that's a 50-second negotiation. When that happens, okay. But obviously it obviously happens a long time. But that year it really pushed the boundary. There were sign and trade deals that were done like days in advance. And they slapped the Bulls. I can't remember who else they slapped, but they slapped the Bulls with a penalty for Lonzo Ball.
It's never gonna end.
So of course not. So then last year, a lot of the teams and agents were really cautious about the July 1st announcements. Like there was a whole bunch of deals that were done, but they would not speak about them on July 1st. The agents were not returning texts. Okay, July 3rd. Now I will confirm that my players signed a contract, which he actually agreed to 2 weeks ago. But Jalen Brunson didn't do that. Like within like minutes of 6 o'clock or whatever it was, he was a Knick. And so like,
and I think that's part of their just like, we need good news here. I can't wait.
Listen, it doesn't matter. It's all, I don't care about any of it. I'm just saying the NBA is in a bind on this one because they are accusing a father of tampering with the son.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they're going to do that. And obviously they announced the other tampering fine 2 months ago. So the investigation is ongoing there. All right. Well, we're running out of time. Spears, you did a piece on Ben Mathurin from the Pacers. I just want to mention to go check that out at Andscape. Please. Mathurin is one of the most interesting players. He's a candidate for Rookie of the Year and Sixth Man of the Year, which is unheard of. The John Havlicek Sixth Man of the Year and the Wilt Chamberlain. They just announced today the new names for the awards. By the way,
hey, it's funny. We talked about that last week.
I know.
We speculated Michael Jordan, right?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't take rocket science analysis to figure that.
I know. I just want us to sound smart.
By the way, I didn't know what Wilt, they named the Rookie of the Year award after Wilt. He won the Rookie of the Year and the MVP. He averaged 37 and 27 his rookie year. Is that good? Anyway, we only got a minute here on Mathurin. Mathurin's been struggling. He's hit a little bit of a rookie wall in the last 5 to 7 games or whatever. But still, and I think the Pacer fans would love it if he played first unit minutes more and more minutes in general so that he wasn't a candidate for sixth man. But what did you think about talking to him?
Fascinating kid. His sister, Jen Mathurin, who played at North Carolina State, she's basically coming back and forth from Montreal to help him out. The middle brother passed away when he was 14, so it certainly had a huge impact on both of them and strengthened their relationship. And so his sister is the one that introduced him to basketball. Sister is certainly being big sister now. She has a master's in social work from NC State, and she basically takes care of his day-to-day operations. And she was like, he's 20. I need to help my brother. I mean, yeah, he's talented, but he's 20. And so I think people would certainly enjoy the story about learning more about They both speak 4 languages. They speak different languages to each other.
Is he
all
of
the time.
Haitian? Is he Haitian descent?
He's Haitian Canadian, so his parents are
Haitian
from Haiti.
descent. Grew up in Montreal, so I'm sure he
Yeah.
speaks French.
Yeah, it's French.
And then
Guess
but
the other
came,
ones.
Came out of the NBA Academy in Mexico City.
Okay, so you know 2 of the other languages. Guess the 4.
So French, English, Spanish, Creole. Is that
Great job, Brian.
All right.
Look at the big
Creole's
brain
a
on
cousin.
Brian.
Oh man,
That's
I love that
good, man.
reference.
That's good. I was wondering if you're gonna listen to the clues.
I know that Creole is based in French, but it ain't the same.
You know what? I kind of giving my mother a hard time because my mom's from New Orleans and she spoke Creole as a child. And my grandmother and her sisters spoke it. And my mom said they only like spoke it when they were talking bad about somebody. And she said she knew it as a child, but they didn't push her to continue with it. And it kind of like fell off. And I'm like, dang. All I know is English and Ebonics, a little bit of Spanish. Like, come on, Ma, I could have known Creole, man. You know? So shout out to my mom.
Absolutely. Well, check out that Mathurin story. We kind of ran out of time.
Please.
Pacers came back from a really good West Coast trip, and they've been slapped around at home the last couple games. So we'll see how they do. All right, Olm, thank you so much. Thank you, Spears. Thank you, Jackson, our producer. Thanks for listening. So Friday podcast, Bontemps' first straw poll is coming out. MVP straw poll.
Yeah,
I already
got that
sent in
text.
my votes.
He won't.
He always like, hey man,
tip
can you
his
give
hand.
him some help from me?
Yeah, hell yeah.
He asked me who my picks are, and then he wants to criticize my pick.
Oh,
Like-
that's not how a poll is supposed to be operated. It's supposed to be
Yeah.
neutral.
It's like I feel like I'm getting like messed with at the ballot box.
Well, now,
You know what I mean? Like leave me alone,
voter
man.
intimidation. Is he giving you voter
Yeah,
intimidation?
he give me voter intimidation. man.
I feel a little bit left out because he doesn't say anything when I send him my
Same.
my
I
ballot.
try to find out. I go, who's leading? Because I did mine yesterday, and he
Yeah.
had like 70 votes of the 100 he gets.
If you don't
he's like,
have the 2
you know, say
European guys in your top 5, he's gonna give you a hard time.
Well, I don't know if you've heard, but he tends to give me a hard time.
He loves Luka.
You know what's
and he
funny?
really loves Joker. Loves Joker.
Whenever he comes up with this straw poll, I feel like this happens to me. Whenever I send in my poll, it's always right before Joel Embiid goes off. And
he's already going off. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I sent this in though before his last explosion. And I start thinking, oh God, I need to get Embiid higher, or I need to get Embiid in there or whatever. And then sometimes I have little second thoughts and he starts laughing. And I remember I told McMahon this one time. McMahon was like, dude, be a man. Just stick with your original ballot. Don't go back on it.
I can hear him saying it. So Bontemps straw poll comes out on Friday. We'll be talking about it on the pod. Who knows what's going to happen on that? It's early in the season. This is earlier than he normally does it. There's a line. Get in line.
Okay.
All right. Thanks
Voter
for listening, Collective.
intimidation.
We'll talk to you on Friday.
All right.